All right, guys, we are live with another episode of Faith the Nation. Just want to test the mics and everything like that. Make sure that you guys can hear us. Let us know in the comments section. Matt, can you hear me?
Yeah,
Okay.
everything's good.
Okay. Yeah, we're live with another episode of Faith the Nation. We've got a little bit of a special episode today. We are going to be joined live by a social media influencer, YouTube video maker up in Alberta, Canada. Uh, his name is PJ the Belt, and he's going to be joining us tonight as we talk a little bit about Alberta separation. This is something that obviously down here in the South, we don't hear too much about it. But believe me that there's some big things that are happening, and I've been following PJ the Belt for a few months now, and he's got a lot of good information and insight about the very real possibility of Alberta actually separating from Canada and becoming its own independent nation. I'm joined with brother Matt Lepasic, and of course, I'm your host, Deacon Brother Alex. God bless you guys. Let us know in the comments where you guys are watching from. Thank you guys and be sure to like and subscribe to the channel. And Matt, are we ready?
We're ready. All right, guys. So I am in New York City. I'm traveling. So we're doing a little bit of remote on remote with extra remote. So any technical difficulties, let us know in the chat room, and we'll bring up our guest here right now. And Alex, go ahead and take it away because I'm going to be working on some stuff here in the background. I'll pipe in.
Yeah. All right. We're joined here with PJ the Belt. God bless you, PJ. Welcome to the channel, Faith and
Bless, man.
Nation. How you doing today?
Hey, man, doing great. How are you guys?
Man, doing good, doing good. I'm excited to have you on, PJ. As I mentioned before, I've been following you for a few months now, especially since the Canadian election that recently happened several months ago. And there's a lot going on in Alberta. There's a lot going on in Western Canada. There's a lot going on in Ottawa. And so I just want to, before we get started, I would just like to ask you the question for our viewers that maybe down here in mostly in America and of course some in Toronto. Uh, Give us a little bit of an understanding of this Alberta separation movement that's happening and why it's taking place.
Yeah, so the Alberta separation movement, or the way we like to call it, independence, because independence is definitely the correct word here. Alberta is not so much looking to separate from Canada as it is looking to become sovereign and exercise its own independence. So this is something that is not new. I'll start right there. The Alberta independence movement has been going on at least officially since the 80s. There's been a multitude of political movements since then. And it started when Trudeau, the father, you guys know who Trudeau is. He actually had a
Yes.
dad who was a prime minister in the 80s, and Canada was going through hell, more specifically, Western Canada under his thumb. This guy literally came in and he was wreaking havoc in Western Canada, just like his son would do 40 years later. Long story short, he blocked Alberta from being able to export its crude oil freely, its hydrocarbons, and then imposed a tax on top to be able to literally take money that belonged to the provinces. I don't know if you guys are familiar. In Canada, provinces own their resources, but Trudeau didn't want to see it that way. He wanted to not have Alberta have so much power over the rest of Canada, being oil rich and all that. So he imposed a tax on there. And so that started the Alberta independence movement. As you guys know, we just had an election here where Donald Trump was a huge factor here in Canada. It just happened literally just back in April. And the Liberals, who have been in power for 10 years and have made everything worse in Canada, every single measurable metric, Canada is worse. They used Trump as they dangled Trump in front of people and basically manipulated them into voting for them again. And Alberta, along with Saskatchewan, but primarily Alberta, were the two provinces that rejected the Liberals uh, soundly. They just rejected them, but we still somehow ended up with a Liberal government yet again, and we're going to be suffering another 4 years of anti-energy policies, anti-family, and so on and so forth. So
Yeah.
Albertans have had enough, and support for Alberta independence has skyrocketed. Some polls have it in the mid 30s, others have it as high as the mid 40s. And you got to
Oh, wow.
remember the magic number here is 50% plus one. And
Now
some polls,
let
again,
me
have
ask you
it.
about that. Yeah, yeah. Let me ask you about that because I've had this discussion with Matt, who's working in the background right now. Um, he was under the impression that it has to be like a very like a little bit more of a majority than just 50% plus one. What exactly does Alberta need to be able to declare its independence?
Because this is something that has never been done before, there's precedent, but not quite to the point where the referendum was actually won. Quebec came very close. They had two referendums. I believe the first one wasn't nearly as successful as the second one, where they came literally, I think, 49 to 51%, 49 to leave and 51 to stay. So
Wow.
we've never actually crossed that line where a province actually got the 50% plus the one. But I try to participate as much as I can with the Alberta Prosperity Project, which is the organization spearheading this whole effort to get Alberta to become independent from Canada. And they do want to see as big of a vote as possible. The more resounding support, the merrier, because then they can't make a case to say, well, the support might be there, but maybe it's not there today, this and that. They're just trying to avoid technicalities, but a referendum, the real majority is 50% plus one. That's why the Quebec one didn't go through because they didn't quite get there, but they've been receiving pampering from the federal government ever since because they came so close. If they didn't, if the number wasn't even close, like they could have, oh, they needed to go to 65%, then they wouldn't have done all the things that they've done for them, you know?
Yeah. So another thing is, I believe it's Bill 54 that your Alberta's premier had recently, I guess, established as a change within the way that this referendum can be held. Tell us a little bit about Bill 54, what it's done for the movement, Alberta independence, and then also, again, just from watching your videos, you've been very informational as far as like this other guy that tried to, I guess, fight you guys or create his own referendum. Tell us a little bit about how that went.
Yeah, so the previous law, because Alberta, since I think 2019, under the previous premier, which is the equivalent of a governor here in Canada, he created a law where it allows for citizens to bring petitions that can be binding on government. His name was Jason Kenney. He then got booted out because he wasn't conservative enough. And Alberta, when we want a conservative premier, we want a real one. Uh, but he created that law, but the law was nearly impossible to reach. The numbers were something to the effect where you would have to get like 300,000 within 90 days or as high as 700,000 signatures. And these are verified signatures. You can't confuse it with like signing an online petition from change.org or something like that. You have to put your address, you have to put your name, some sort of ID, confirm that you're actually an Albertan. And our current premier, Danielle Smith, who is more conservative than the previous guy, at least she so far shown that, has actually made it more attainable. Instead of being 300,000 plus up to 700,000, she lowered it to 177,000 within 120 days, which actually makes it attainable because people think, well, 177,000 out of a population of 5 million people. You know how difficult it is to get 177,000 people to sign a paper with their address, a physical paper with their address. That's really difficult. And then you have this
Right.
individual, a has-been politician from one of the most corrupt governments in Alberta history. Alison Redford was the premier when he was the deputy premier. This guy is ridden with scandals. At some point, it's alleged that he went to Poland because I believe that's his background, and he spent like $20,000 and he expensed it to the taxpayers, and it was a personal trip and he expensed it to the taxpayers. But anyways, this guy hadn't been in the public eye for a decade at least, and then suddenly he just popped into the picture as the Alberta independence movement was gaining momentum. He suddenly showed up and came out of the woodwork, and he created his own petition, which is not, it's not really to have a real independence referendum, because if you want to vote against the real referendum, then just do that. You can always vote no and try to defeat it
Right.
that way. He doesn't want the referendum to even happen. That's the bottom line.
So by him creating his, I guess, his own petition, it does that kind of mess up the possibility of an actual independence referendum from actually being on the ballot?
Yes, my understanding, and I'm not a lawyer, not even close. My understanding is that you can only have a petition at a time, a referendum at a time. I've literally heard it on the news, and I've heard it straight out of this individual's mouth, saying that his goal is to change the conversation by not having the actual independence referendum. So he would take up the time that would be dedicated to the real one, to the real independence referendum, by creating a bogus one. His is different from the real independence referendum because it's not a constitutional question. He's looking to make government policy, official government policy, that Alberta will never even attempt to separate from
Mm,
Canada. No matter what Canada does to us, no matter how much they take advantage of our industries, no matter how much they stifle our progress, we will never, will forever be Canadian. That's how he portrays it.
wow. Okay. So yeah. So he's really trying to just put his own stink in that mess. Basically, he's trying to mess you guys up
Sabotage.
big time.
Oh
Sabotage.
yeah.
Um, Tell us a little. Obviously, from your experience up north, obviously, you know, we had two big elections. We had our election a little bit before the Canadians' election, and you kind of alluded a little bit to it about how Donald Trump kind of messed up the elections in Canada. Tell us a little bit about that. How did Donald Trump, I guess, mess up the Canadian election?
Yeah, I suppose you can say he threw the Liberals a lifeline. Back in as recently as February, January of this year, Justin Trudeau, the outgoing prime minister, the disgraced drama teacher, he was polling like 15, 20 points, 15, 20 percentage points behind the conservative, Pierre Poliev. Uh, and then, Trump is inaugurated in January, and he takes over and he starts making, a fuzz about the whole situation with the trade between Canada and the United States. And they found a way to spin it to blame Trump for all the issues that Canada has had over the past decade, including our economy that's struggling. Literally, Canadians bought that too. They they bought into the fact that the Liberals blamed Trump for a decade of failure and terrible policies and
Hmm.
laws. And
Don't
there's
be
just a lot
rude.
of TDS out here. There's just a lot of Trump derangement syndrome in Canada, and they exploited it.
All right, thank you. Yes, don't mind the sound bites in the background. That's coming from Matt. But so my thing was is that obviously, down here in the states, we were begging for Donald Trump to get back into the office, especially after the 4 years of a disastrous 4 year term of Joe Biden. So for us, obviously, getting Donald Trump was a good thing. And yes, obviously he could be a bit strong in some of the words, and calling Trudeau Governor Trudeau, and all those types of things. But hearing how, from an American standpoint, hearing how that Donald Trump messed up the elections for Canadians, and this is really more towards the conservatives. And obviously, I'm assuming you're a conservative from watching the videos. I can almost guarantee you're on the conservative side. Yeah, kind of. Um, if another person from another country can mess up another country's election, then the problem isn't with the person from the other country. The problem is with the country itself. Is that a
Yep.
fair assessment?
I would agree with that statement, my friend. I honestly, I don't blame Donald Trump for a second. The timing could have been better. Could have he thrown a bone to the conservatives by not getting involved and maybe giving them some time to like figure it out, and maybe they would have worked out better. And honestly, I think if the conservatives would have taken government, maybe things would have been better because they would have more aligned principle wise and ideology wise. However, I I don't I partially blame the conservatives too. Like I don't think they were conservative enough. I think they were
Yeah,
pandering
yeah,
to the wrong
yeah.
crowd. A lot of people here in Alberta especially will have that opinion that Pierre Polyev might have not been as conservative as he should have been, including some of the issues that Alberta has had historically. He said he wouldn't touch them just to appease Quebec. But how did that work
Yeah,
out for him? And then
right.
it is indeed the fault of the people when you can be so easily fooled. When we've had 10 years where every single metric, Canada has just gotten worse. Crime is higher, groceries are more expensive, you cannot afford a house, immigration is out of control, and these people somehow convinced you that a president from a completely different country is to blame for all those issues that the liberals created. It's insane.
Wow. Yeah, no, the way you put it, I mean, that's exactly, um, uh, that's definitely some, the way to put it. But from, I guess from our side, the way I'm looking at it, because I've been hearing a little bit about the Alberta separation even before the Canadian elections, and it
Mhm.
was it was kind of my understanding that if Canada had elected Pierre Poilievre and went the conservative route, then perhaps would it have been a little bit harder for Alberta to be able to get referendum? In other words, electing Mark Carney, didn't that really like propel even more this movement for Alberta separation? So technically, having Carney in office, doesn't that work better for the movement?
Yeah, honestly, Central Canada kind of did us a favor on that one. That's the other angle on that. Obviously, it's a bittersweet thing to realize because
Yeah.
that definitely the Liberals winning after the terrible 10 years we've had has put a fire under Albertans that we haven't had before. We've never, the Premier herself will say, Danielle Smith, that she's never seen support for Alberta sovereignty in the mid 30s ever, even during the 80s when there was a elected official who won on an independence platform. it, I think it peaked at like low 20s, and now there's
Mhm.
some polls showing as high as mid 40s. Like this is a very real situation in Alberta that's brewing, and there's a lot of people that are getting very organized, including, like I said before, the Alberta Prosperity Project. Pierre winning, I think, would have ended up kind of quelling the sentiment. It would have toned down the temperature in Alberta because he would have thrown some things at us, kind of like Stephen Harper did. Not sure if you know who that was. That was the
Mhm.
last conservative prime minister here in Canada. He was a conservative, and the Alberta independence movement wasn't nearly as high because he was pro energy. He wasn't as pro energy as he could have been, but he would placate the whole situation by giving Alberta certain things, certain concessions that Albertans wanted, and the economy was doing well, and life was, affordable here. So we didn't have the need to go after independence as much as we do. Like, a lot of people, this is for them is cents and dollars. Like, they realize that Alberta would be much better off and that we've been taking advantage for way too long.
Yeah. You mentioned Danielle Smith, who is like your basically like, Alberta's governor, and just speaking in, U.S. terms. But
Mm-hmm.
she's the premier of Alberta. Um, what side do you think she's taking here? Because I've seen it that she's kind of playing the middle road here. She doesn't want to be too pro Alberta independence movement. And then she's also trying to talk about like having a free and independent Alberta within Canada, or I can't remember the wording that she used. Where do you think she actually stands in all of this?
Yeah, in the independence movement, at least as far as I can tell, I try to stay in touch with that movement as much as I can, because that is really, at this point, politically all I care about. I just want to see Alberta become independent from Canada. I think that's the best thing that can
Yeah,
happen to this province and this part of the world, for the West to free itself. I think she's being playing the middle. I think that's a decently accurate characterization of what she's doing. Certain people within the Alberta independence movement think that she's doing the right thing. She's trying to keep this grassroots, keep it a volunteer movement, a movement of the people. She doesn't want to politicize it. Others are saying that she's not brave enough, that she could take more precautions. She could install a firewall, is what people call it here, bring our pensions here from Ottawa. Alberta police, like Ontario and Quebec, have their own provincial police. Get the RCMP, which is our federal police, get them out of here and bring on Alberta police, which she has moved towards that. But she could do it like immediately through a mandate because she's got a majority government. She could do many more things. Other people say that, well, she could do a lot less. She did just lower the threshold to make a
right.
referendum actually attainable. And she's also bringing our difficulties with Ottawa to the front. She's bringing it to the spotlight by talking about it as much as she can. So just play in the middle, I would say.
Yeah. As far as like an independent Alberta, let's say the referendum happens and Alberta gains their independence. What does an independent Alberta look like economically? What are some of the things that Alberta is going to be able to strive on by separating from Canada? And what are they going to be able to provide North America and even the world as an independent Alberta?
That's a really good question. Economically, there is a document that the leaders of the Alberta Prosperity Project produced. I appreciate the APP because, again, they are the most legitimate movement in Alberta promoting independence. And they created a fiscal budget, basically, would-be budget of what an independent Alberta would look like, removing Ottawa from our finances. And it looks pretty damn good. It's what I was telling you before. For a lot of people, this is cents and dollars. And they realize that Alberta would simply just be fiscally better in every way possible when you speak about the economy. Our We would be able to negotiate from a strong position, from a position of sovereignty. We would negotiate with Canada and the United States as an independent nation. And people will say, well, you'd be a landlocked nation. Well, okay. Aren't there any landlocked nations that are successful? I can think of two or three really quickly. And you have Switzerland, you have Austria, you have Hungary. All of these nations are landlocked and they have really good economies. So when you have a province like Alberta that is blocked at every single try that it tries to do, every single thing that it tries to do to advance its economy, it's blocked by bureaucracy, by the federal government, by other
Right.
provinces that are left leaning, like British Columbia. How is it different from being a landlocked country if we're already a landlocked province, if that makes sense? So, but
Right.
if we were a country, we at least can negotiate by ourselves. We don't have to get the federal government, who already don't want to see us prosper and don't want to see us get ahead, negotiating for us. We could also
Yeah.
negotiate directly with the United States, which that's another point right there.
Yeah, I was actually, yeah, that was going to be my next, I guess, follow up question is, that's where the United States comes in because surely, with the rich land that Alberta has, with its oil reserves and everything that Alberta offers, you you better darn well know that Donald Trump is going to be like, he's going to be licking his lips and be like, man, I know we can make a deal, right? We can help you guys out. You guys can help us. And so the landlock issue, I think, is really just an argument from silence. It's not even going to be an issue for Alberta because again, I mean, there's going to be other means to be able to negotiate with the United States, and that'll open up, East and West Coast right there. If Alberta does nothing else but become its own independent nation, and that's assuming that Saskatchewan and the other provinces don't, immediately follow to join.
Mm-hmm.
That's the other thing too is, and we'll get into a little bit of the 51st state thing in a little bit, but I want to focus a little bit more on Canada per se. If Alberta does wind up getting the referendum and being able to declare independence by the will of the people, what do you think is going to happen with the rest of Western Canada?
The rest of Western Canada, obviously, this is all hypothetical because we don't know. We'll see. We'll see what happens in spring of 2026 when the official referendum comes in and we vote our way out of this mess that is today's Canada. Western Canada specifically, Saskatchewan is very closely aligned with Alberta. It's like its little brother or little sibling. So if Alberta left, I think it'd be a domino effect. I don't know about Manitoba because they're a bit more left-leaning over there, although rural Manitoba is very conservative, but Winnipeg controls everything, the capital basically. And then British Columbia is very leftist too, the Vancouver area and the Lower Mainland. But what I can tell you right now is that if Alberta separated, the pressure for Saskatchewan to follow suit, either join Alberta in whatever Alberta has become, whether an independent nation or part of the United States, which is also being talked about, I think Saskatchewan would want to follow. It would be a domino effect there. What happens with British Columbia and Manitoba, that's a little bit trickier, especially with British Columbia. BC, because it's in the coast and all of that, they might even try to just separate from Canada themselves and be their own country as well. It will open a Pandora box for sure, or a can of worms. Like all hell will break loose because people think that it's Ontario holding Canada together. No, it's Alberta's money. If Alberta takes
Right.
the amount of money that it sends to other provinces as a bribe, including Quebec, this country falls apart.
Yeah. So talk a little bit about that. There's in Canada, there's like subsidies, or I mean, help me out a little bit. Obviously, it's you're just my neighbor to the north, and I'm not too in tune, and I'm trying to be, but within Canada, there's some kind of like subsidies that each province pays to Ottawa, and I think they call them. Help me out here.
Equalization.
Where equalization payments. Yeah. So tell us a little bit how that works, how Alberta's involved in that, and what that looks like for an Albertan. And yeah, tell us about that.
Yeah, man, it's the Soviet socialist dream just north of the 49th parallel, guys. You have what they call have-not provinces, which are the biggest culprit of all of these is Quebec. The Frenchies out east that we Albertans have really no love lost for. It's like a rivalry there. Canada, what they do is that they take money from those provinces like Alberta that have a higher GDP production, and then they redistribute it, equalization, to equalize, make things equal, and keep the same standard of living all over the country. And on paper, that sounds great. But you know that the thing with socialism, right? Like at some point you run out of other people's money, right? So to add insult to injury, for Alberta specifically is the fact that those same provinces that are the biggest recipients of funds coming from Alberta and its energy industry are the biggest opponents and the most pronounced opponents of the development of said industry. That is the irony that I don't tire from talking about every single day on my channel, is the fact that Quebec takes to the tune of $15 billion from Alberta in equalization payments every year. So you imagine a pipeline, but of cash, literally cash, billions of dollars from Alberta to Quebec every single year, but they will not allow even a liquefied natural gas pipeline from Alberta through Quebec to the East Coast for us to continue to produce that money that they so enjoy to pay for their socialist programs. Then you have a bunch of
Yeah,
others in the Maritimes, like the little ones in the East Coast. They also consume some of that, but the biggest culprit is really Quebec.
it sounds very hypocritical if they like your money, but they don't want you to make the money. Um, now, uh, as far as Canada's response, or should I say Ottawa's response, I know obviously the movement is definitely gaining speed. It's gaining ground. People are talking about it all throughout Alberta and even Western Canada, even Canada, to be fair. But what is some of the things that you guys are hearing from Ottawa to, other than that one guy that wants to put in that his own little referendum or whatever? Like, what are some things that maybe is coming in from like Ottawa, like Mark Carney, or from some of the others that are trying to stop you guys?
Yeah, so Mark Carney finds himself in a very uncomfortable position. He doesn't want to give credence or credibility to the movement,
He's doing
but he
that
can't help
often, actually. He's finding
it.
himself in awkward positions.
Yes, but exactly. But it can't help it because it's inevitable. The movement has taken a life of its own and it's everywhere. And then his buddies in the mainstream media, which, by the way, you know what Donald Trump just recently did, which he removed funding from public broadcasting, PBS, and all those guys?
Yeah, yeah.
Canada is that on steroid. We have literally a propaganda arm of the liberal government called the CBC, and then all the other minions, CTV, Global News, and all that. They all are paid by the liberal government. You can literally look this up right now and put liberal government media bailout, and they give billions. And Mark Carney literally just said that he would increase the amount of funding that the CBC gets every year and put it into law so that if a conservative, God forbid, wins the next election, they can't just take the funding from the CBC. And this is in light of the fact that Pierre Poilievre threatened to stop funding public broadcasting because they've become propaganda. The point that I'm trying to make with that is the fact that the news, they have been undermining it, underestimating it, attacking it, smearing the Alberta independence movement, but they can't stop talking about it. You put Alberta independence, and every single day you see mainstream media talking about it. They're now trying to give a lot more attention to this guy, the has-been politician who popped out of nowhere, and saying that he's getting a ton of support and all of this, but they're still talking about Alberta independence because they know they're worried and they don't even want it to get to a referendum. Tell me you're scared when you don't even want your opponent to show up in the battlefield.
Yeah, I mean, it's they obviously any media is good media, right? Even if it's bad, even if it's a smear, because what are you doing is that you're bringing it out there, and people have minds of their own. They can think for themselves. If CBC is out there and they're talking about Alberta separation, and let's just say there's this, somebody in Alberta that hasn't heard much about the Alberta separation, and now they're like, what? We're trying to
Oh yeah.
separate? That would be a good idea, right? And they're talking to their wife, or they're talking to their friends. They're like, man, that's a good idea, actually. Like, why are they telling us that's a bad idea, right? And so they'll smear it, but all they're doing is really eventually just going to hurt themselves. So, if it was me, in Alberta, I would welcome any kind of publicity, whether it's negative or positive. Obviously, we want positive publicity. We want to. I'm sure you guys want to properly educate Albertans to make the best decision for Albertans, and so that's why you do what you do, right? That's why you're putting out the videos, you and some of these other guys. APP, I follow a little bit about some of the stuff that they do as well. I think the guy's name is, one of the guys' name is Jeffrey Rath. I think that
Mhm.
is right. He's one of the attorneys. Um, so let's say hypothetically Alberta, gets to separate or become independent from Canada. Um, what One of the first steps I would think would be to have a leader, somebody who's leading this new party. Would that be Danielle Smith, or do you think that would be somebody else?
There's the hypothetical and there's the law, and the law doesn't say really anything about that. How do I know? Because, like you mentioned, Jeffrey Rath, he's a constitutional lawyer. Like, this is literally what the guy does. It's constitutional law. And what they've talked about at the APP is that once the mandate is given through referendum, there's something called the Clarity Act, and the parties, including the federal government, Alberta itself, and the provinces, have a duty to negotiate. It's not a matter of, well, maybe we will, maybe we won't. Do we want to even? Do we want to entertain them? No, at this point, they have to negotiate. Oh, and the indigenous too, the Canadian Indians also, First Nations also have to
The
be
First
consulted.
Nations, yeah.
Yes, so these would be the four parties. It's all other provinces, the federal government, the First Nations, natives, and then the Alberta itself. But it's not a will they, might they. No, it's they have to negotiate. At that point, what I believe happens is that Danielle Smith is no longer coming at it from, if it's her, by the way, because we don't know. Again, this is uncharted territory. It's never happened before.
Right.
Not in Canada. I don't even think it's happened in North America, where there's a secession movement that succeeds, right? So Danielle Smith, if it was her, wouldn't be negotiating in the capacity of premier anymore. I believe she'd be negotiating in the capacity of the leader of this new would-be nation. And we would have to reconfederate. If we wanted to be a part of Canada, we would have to renegotiate re-entering. The constitution would have to be open. I just don't see how Albertans get that far and then fall for Canada again. I
Yeah.
think we would probably just go our own way.
Yeah. Yeah, that brings up the question. Obviously, we've heard a lot about 51st state this, 51st state Canada, and, Donald Trump's ambitions to, inquire Canada, which I don't think from a conservative standpoint, acquiring all of Canada is the wisest move for us. But obviously, from, conservative standpoint, from me, being a conservative and being a Christian and obviously loving my country, um, I would want. I'm actually rooting for Alberta's independence, but I would think that it would be really cool for Alberta itself to possibly become the 51st state. Um, what is your take on the Alberta situation? Would you prefer complete independence, or are you hoping for a 51st state? Where do you kind of lean in all that?
Well, personally, I'm just open minded. I believe, as a base level, that Alberta, for one, culturally and even geographically, just aligns better with the United States. You look at the culture of to Albertans today, and even for the past 100 years, we definitely have a lot more in common with people in Montana, Idaho, Texas. A good 25% of the ranchers, when Alberta was being settled, came from Oklahoma, Texas, and Montana. So historically, there's that connection there. But the way I view it is, I'm open minded. We definitely need to probably go at the Texas way first. I don't mean the violence part, I mean becoming a country first. We need to see how that goes. We need to see how we do, whether we can stand on our own 2 feet. But what I can say is also that that is something that would likely be put to a vote once Alberta gets to that point. If there's a large enough amount of the population of the new, Alberta citizens, if you will, that want to become a part of the United States, well, there's probably going to be some sort of negotiation. Would I prefer being part of the United States as opposed to staying in the situation that Alberta's in today? Yes. But I also want to find out what an independent nation of Alberta looks like.
Yeah. No, that's good. I have heard some of the Canadians talk a little bit about, like, if they get a divorce from Canada, not to go on the rebound, too quickly with, with the United States and stuff like that. Although I think it's a little bit different than obviously a marriage, but I can definitely see the analogy there. Obviously, I don't know, Matt, are you still back there, Matt?
I'm here. I'm here.
Obviously, okay,
Struggling with Engrok. Gosh,
that's okay.
I'm here.
So, obviously, with the 51st state jargon that's out there, we are hoping. I think most Americans are actually rooting for Alberta. Number one, for independence, but I think there's a little bit in us that obviously would like to see America actually grow with more conservatives. I think it would definitely put the conservatives in a stronger situation. We would grow as a nation, just at the snap of a finger in a GDP sense, with how rich Alberta actually is. And I think that's what people don't realize, is how rich Alberta actually could be if you guys were able to grow at your full potential. And somebody like a Donald Trump would definitely be somebody, that would be rooting you guys on and helping you guys within that. But obviously, we're not going to have Trump forever, right? And so I do understand, that kind of like being reserved. Well, they have Trump now, but they're not going to have Trump forever, right? Do we really want to join them? Maybe we should do it by ourselves first and try it out that way. But I think inevitably, I think you guys are going to be a 51st state, man. At least that's what I'm hoping for. But you know what, man? I think at the end of the day, we are really just rooting for Alberta. We're rooting for Alberta's prosperity because we know that you guys are tied down due to Ottawa's restrictions. The carbon tax that is, kind of killing your guys' industry and stuff like that. So, when is the referendum going to happen? Is it going to happen? Do you guys have insurers? How's that working?
Well, it's before the courts now. I don't know if you heard, but the Elections Alberta, the bureaucrats in there decided to send it for further analysis of its constitutionality. Basically adding red tape, creating some sort of a delay tactic to make things, to have the anti-independence one take the spotlight. We'll see how that works. But yeah, it's before the courts now. Elections Alberta, APP deposited into Elections Alberta, and the bureaucrat, the top guy, sent it before a judge. That's already in the process. There's going to be hearings. The lawyers from the APP are going to be making the case that it is constitutional. It actually should take precedent over the other one because it's an actual constitutional question as opposed to a policy question. We're still aiming for spring of 2026 to get that referendum going.
If for whatever reason, if let's say the courts say no, this is not good or whatever, they try to forbid you guys, would you then prefer just being annexed by the United States?
That's an interesting question there. Here's what I'll add: the premier knows better. The premier of Alberta knows better, man. She knows that 2/3, 66% of her base are pro-independence. That's a powerful movement. When you have 66% of the people who put you in power pushing for an outcome, she actually made statements. Her Minister of Justice and herself came out and said that the judge that Elections Alberta shouldn't be delaying the will of the people, that they should just let the referendum go through as it should. She got into
Yeah.
all kinds of stuff for saying that, but that tells you the amount of pressure that is under her. I believe she also supports it. She might be using it as a bargaining chip because she says a lot about, well, we should stay within Canada but become more independent, kind of like Quebec. So she may be using it for that purpose, and I suppose more power to her, because if she can get anything that helps Alberta become more sovereign, whether it's within Canada or not, if it becomes more sovereign in the meantime, at least we're moving towards the right direction, right? Uh, but yeah, man, she's got a lot of pressure under her, and people like pushing her towards moving for independence.
Yeah, I think if it was me, if I was in, let's say your shoes, I would want her to be like very definitive on her stance, not necessarily playing the middle part. Just so this way I would know where she stands. You know what I mean? But I do also understand her position as a politician. Number one, that's obviously a part of Canada, and so she does have to, you know, I guess play her chips very carefully in all of that. So I do get it, but I'm sure you would like to see her, make a choice one way or another, at least showing, which way she stands one way or another.
Oh yeah, man.
Let
But
me interject.
Oh yeah.
Let me interject real quick, because that's what I'm sort of interested in. I like to know what's the you said 60% of her base is supporting of separation, annexing, whatever it's called, so on and so forth. So like real world in terms of Alberta population, what do those numbers dissolve into? What does it look like when you talk about when you go to Starbucks or in the street? Is this like a realistic thing in terms of random conversations and random chatter that's happening in the real world?
Yeah, man, that's a very valid question. So yeah, 2/3 of her, because they did a poll recently. 2/3 of her base support Alberta independence, but that doesn't mean 2/3 of Albertans. There's been polling, which tells us kind of where we're at more or less. The lowest polling has shown that a third of Albertans, that's 33%. And mind you, this pollster, because not all polls are created equal, right? You know that a lot of them come with their own biases. So this
100%.
pollster is left leaning, heavy left leaning, and he put it at 33%, unprecedented. It's never gone up that high. And then a more centrist to right leaning pollster had it mid 40s. I'm talking 45, I think. Don't quote me exactly, but mid 40s, 43, between 43 and 45, which again, this is a real number. And obviously, the cities is a bit more difficult because cities tend to be more left leaning. But you go to rural Alberta, and a lot of people are talking about it. A lot of people are putting down those maple leaves and raising Alberta flags. And a lot of people, a lot of Albertans feel like there's just no hope here. So you can hear it at the doors, mostly in rural and the suburbs. The cities, not so much. And that's what we're working towards, is to educate people in the cities.
Okay, so to follow up on that, let me ask another question. So, the generic line is that when Trump started pulling all this language, this very fluffy language about coming into the country and becoming the 51st state, the idea was that, hey, people in Canada don't want to hear that jazz. We were doing good with this whole idea thing until you started saying all that insanity. How did you see that impact your niche over there in terms of your understanding for the willingness of people to want to succeed, for example? And did that impact? Did you see people say no? I was down for it now, but now that guy opened his mouth, I'm done. Go Canada.
Yeah. He's a polarizing guy. There's definitely both reactions, because there's people who are conservative in Alberta who don't like Trump, especially the older people. I find that the younger conservatives are all over Trump and appreciate what he's doing for his country and wish we had that for ourselves. I'm talking the population that is 40 and under. But then you have people that are conservative but not Trump conservative, right? More like what you guys would call like rhinos, or more like Ted Cruz conservative, not so much MAGA conservative, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you have those guys, but then we honestly are emboldened by seeing the support from Americans, not just your president, but Americans in general. There are so many Americans talking about this. It just everyday people saying we support you, whether you choose to go and become the 51st state, a territory, or you go on your own. We understand what's happening to you, and I think it's the American spirit. Your history back in 1776, you guys were basically a colony of what we are a colony of today. It's taxation without representation all over again. So I think you guys see that and see your history kind of repeating itself with Alberta. So yeah, honestly, Trump is polarizing. Some people, and I would say in independence, the majority of people see Trump as an ally. I would dare say, and don't quote me on this, I'm not a pollster, but out of 10 people I talk to, 7 are like, I'm super glad to see Americans and their president support Alberta independence.
And how did you get into this? Like, were you an activist in some sort of other field, or like, how did you all of a sudden make this your dominant focus?
I was nothing like that, man. I was just a father of 5 children, married, just basically hoping that the conservatives would win to stop the bleeding. That's really what it was, man. And don't confuse the fact that like, oh, I was conservative, like now that we lost, we want to separate. That's not what it was. That was just the straw that broke the camel's back, man, for so
Right.
many of us. Because then you have the leftists on the other side say, well, you guys are just a bunch of sore losers. You lose, you just take it in the chin and you keep. That's not what it is. And then the more I understood the history of Alberta's grievances not being heard by Ottawa, the more angry I got and the more indignant and just like, okay, it's time to go. And I'm happy to see that I'm not the only one who was thinking that way. So what happens is I was hoping that the conservatives would win. Like stop that bleeding, see if things will get better. Canada would freaking just, start acting like a legitimate country and not this crazy dystopia that we have today. But that didn't happen. Central Canada and Eastern Canada showed us in the West yet again that they will not do anything in support of Western Canada, that they'll always go against whatever our principles are. 99%, no, 95% of Alberta voted conservative. And the
Wow.
East voted heavily. Yeah. Oh, yeah, man. Here it's blue, like conservative is blue. It's the opposite of you guys. You guys, Democrats is blue. Here, conservative is blue. And 95% of Alberta, you look at our map, it's like 2 ridings that went to anything other than conservative. I think 2 or 3 of like, I think 37 ridings. So it was like a good 90 plus percent went conservative.
Wow.
So I had it, man. I realized that many other people were feeling that way. So I just started talking about it. I just started putting it on YouTube. My wife was like, just put it out there because I'm kind of tired of hearing it, and I just started putting it on YouTube.
She said, "Talk to
And
other people.
then,
Don't talk to me about it anymore."
yeah, and I don't blame her, right? Like I talk to her, I just complain all the time and getting worked up, like, oh my God, Alberta should just go its own way. I'm a blue collar guy out here in Alberta. I work with my hands and I work in transportation and stuff
PJ,
like
I
that.
don't
And I
want to
just,
hear about the Alberta. Go talk to the internet.
yeah, man. I just started talking, putting together like voiceovers because I didn't want to put my face out there because I'm still employed, right? But I realized that my employer is a cool guy. He's a conservative guy himself, so I got to pay those bills, right? Like I didn't want to risk it. Then I also was like, you know what? I'm just gonna put my face out there. People want to see the face behind the voice, so.
And here's a tip,
Yeah.
yeah, I back in the day when I used to work with Alex Jones, when I stopped working there, I had to use my middle name. So you can just make your middle name become your first name. You got a whole new life.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I just went
I
initials.
I can
I
help
just went
you.
initials here.
Okay. Well,
Yeah, that's
Alex
cool,
is like,
man.
for the whole time we've been doing the show, like every time, like Alex is really into all this Alberta separation stuff, or or just in general, the hope that Canada will become a 51st state. And I'm over here like a pessimist, being like, "Are you retarded?" It's like, you really think it's going to happen? And so I have like a cliche character based on my opinion. I want it to happen, But am I not correct that, like, over here in the U.S., just to let you in, we'd have to have a 2/3 of all the states essentially vote, similar to like a constitutional amendment. I don't really know what the process would be, but just in my, because I'm only smart because of AI nowadays. But when I AI'd it, I think it was telling me that there was a dominant percentage of the provinces would also have to vote to allow you out of the union. Is that not correct, or can you enlighten us on that?
Yeah, so like I said before, it's never been done before, so it's uncharted territory. But what the law says, which is called the Clarity Act, and they created that law because Quebec came so close, right? So they had to create a law like, okay, what if these people got to that 50% plus one vote, right? What would have happened? So they created some sort of steps or mechanism to see how they would deal with a province separating. And Canada is really the only, I believe, country in the world that allows this, like a portion of their country to legally separate from the rest of the country. Uh, yeah, they would have to enter into negotiations. That's what the law says. Albertans vote as a majority to separate from Canada. Canada would have to negotiate. It doesn't say that they could just say no. We would have to come to terms on what does it look like, because Albertans are not just going to sit there. We showed that we're ready to go, and a big difference maker. And I think Dr. Dennis Modry talked about this in one of his live town halls. Is that at that point, if there's a stalemate, what makes Alberta a nation is international recognition. So if you have
Sure.
any major country, and I would dare say a little neighbor to the south, which is the most powerful country on earth, indicating what Canada just indicated for Palestine, that they're going to recognize it as a state, a
Oh man.
two-state solution, if you will, then we have all the chips. And like Trump would say, we have all the cards. They have no cards. If the USA says we're going to recognize their independence, they have no cards.
I got
It's
one
over
last
at that
question,
point.
and I'm gonna let Alex get back to it. But is it? I was just on the pickleball courts over here because I play pickleball every day. I'm a pickleball psychopath, and anyhow, I was having a conversation with this lady, and she ended up being from Alberta. Because our pastor is from Toronto. We feel like honorary Canadians. Our first love was over there, and anyhow, okay,
Yep.
so. She's like, well, we're the ones that have all the money. We're the ones that have all the wealth. We've got all the oil, right? So is that accurate that Alberta is seen as the wealthier side of Canada?
I don't know if it's seen, but it factually is. We have the third largest oil reserves in the world. It's, I think, Venezuela, then the Saudis,
Yeah.
and then Alberta. Uh, our oil is a combination of the heavy stuff and then the super thick tar, what they call the tar sands. But it's deposits confirmed. It's the third largest in the world. It's crazy. And then we have a whole lot of natural gas. Then we have critical minerals, more so on the Saskatchewan side, but we also have uranium and stuff like that. We have a bunch of coal, bunch of stuff, and then our population is so young compared to the rest of Canada. Canada has a really high level of people that are on the third age, right? Like seniors and stuff. So you combine that, and we have the highest GDP, like GDP per capita in all of Canada, and it's not even close. Obviously, Ontario, being the biggest population, has the largest GDP, but per capita, per person, Alberta is actually the highest by far. I think Mississippi passed Ontario not long ago in wealth, like
Wow.
GDP per capita, and Alberta is like way up there with, I think, with Texas and so on and so forth, like way up there with Texas
Wow.
per capita,
Yeah.
obviously.
Yeah. And so I know you got to get going soon. But you brought up a really good point. Mark Carney recently messed up some of the trading between the trade agreement between Canada and the United States with his remarks about possibly, I guess, acknowledging Palestine as a state, right? An independent country, which is a terrorist state, right? Everybody knows it's a terrorist state. It's a terrorist organization. It's ran by them, and yet he's willing to. Um, recognize them as a state. And there comes the conundrum that he probably just put himself in. That possibly next year, Alberta declares its independence through the referendum. And now Mark Carney is going to be stuck in a pickle where he's willing to recognize a terrorist organization as a state. He's going to have to, if he's going to be consistent, or unless he's going to be a hypocrite, he's going to have to acknowledge Alberta as a state, And so I just find that humorous almost. But I definitely see the pickle that he's putting himself into. But I like what you said, is that Donald Trump is the wild card in all of this, right? If Alberta gets a 50% plus one, the only thing that would stop it from becoming its own nation would be the nobody else recognizing it, and mainly it would be Donald Trump. That would be the only thing that would stop it, because if you don't get the recognition from the South, right, from the United States, then it's going to be an uphill battle from there to obtain independence. But I think the stars are aligning for you guys in Alberta. I think, again, I think it started with Mark Carney winning, Pierre Poilievre. It wasn't what started the separation, but like you said, I like what you said. It was the straw that broke the camel's back, right? And I think when the referendum happens, I really am rooting for you guys, and I really think you guys are going to obtain independence. And I think we're probably going to be one of the first to actually recognize you as your own independent country, and that's what we're rooting for. PJ, again, I know you got to go. Really quick, PJ, tell us how we can follow you, how we can find you.
All right, well, mostly YouTube. PJ the Belt on YouTube. I just recently started a Twitter. You can find me there too, at PJ the Belt. Simple as that, at PJ the Belt. I'm trying to post on there as much as possible. I wasn't super active on Twitter prior to this. I was mostly YouTube. So YouTube and Twitter for now. And I'll keep calling it Twitter, man. It's just that whole X thing is annoying.
Yeah. Well, I think they still call it tweets. So,
yeah,
whatever that means.
What's the point?
Yeah. Well, PJ, hey, man, it's been a pleasure. Again, I just want to thank you for joining us here on Faith and Nation. And for you guys that are watching, please be sure to follow at PJ the Belt. You should be able to click right there in the description, in the YouTube description, and it should send you right straight to his channel. Be sure to follow him on YouTube. PJ, thank you, man. God bless you. And we'll be in touch, man. I'll continue following you and touch base again.
Thank you guys so much. I appreciate the time. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, PJ. Have a good one.
Later.
You too.
Alrighty, Alex.
All right. Well, that was PJ the Belt. Something, again, as I mentioned before, Alberta separation. Be sure to follow him on YouTube. He's got some really good content that he's putting out all day now. He's always putting out new videos. And so, again, just be sure to follow him. He's always got some good information. All right. So, on to our regularly scheduled program. We've got some topics for you guys. We've got some things that have been coming in. Let me see here. Let me go to the control panel. So we've got a few discussions to talk about. We've got some persecutions in Africa. We are going to be talking about more Epstein discussion, but it's going to be a little bit of a different angle here. We're going to be talking about Epstein's Satanism. We will be discussing Texas House of Representatives. They are voting and have just voted to arrest or at least issue arrest warrants for House Democrats. We are going to talk a little bit about Macron's wife and the interview between Candace Owens and Tucker Carlson. We will be touching on Jim Brewer. And of course, we do have some Gaza discussions to get into. But first, we've got some things coming in from the Congo, from the Democratic Republic of Congo in Africa. There has been some major persecutions coming out there. It says that there was over 40 Christians that were killed in a church gathering, and it was done by, you've guessed it, it was done by some ISIS, the ISIS organization, which is really just an Islamic, radical Islam. I don't know. Do we call it radical Islam? That's my question. Like, is it? I mean, is that fair to say that Islam that kills Christians, is that really radical, or is that really what Islam actually teaches? You know, I mean, this stuff has to get out there. I mean, you don't see it much in the mainstream media. You don't hear about Christians being persecuted in the mainstream media, and you have to ask yourselves why. You know, why do we not hear about the Christians that are being persecuted in other countries? Why don't we hear much about it in Syria, right? From Al-Sahara, I think that's his name, right? The guy that changes his name all the time. Why are we not hearing about this? And, you know, why are we... We're overloaded.
We're too busy talking about Epstein and Trump and everything else, and our poor little attention spans that used to be able to handle at least, you know, a 2.5 hour movie. You know, we can't even handle 2 minutes of just sitting there remaining idle. So we're just tossed to and fro, going from one thing to the next. And
more than 40 worshippers killed after an attack on a church in Africa. An ISIS-linked group has claimed responsibility for this, and a witness has now come forward and spoken to Fox. Senior foreign affairs correspondent Greg Palcott has this horrifying story for us. So, Greg, what exactly did the witness say?
Sandra, it was an unbelievable massacre. In the words of the eyewitness to Fox, we don't understand why this is all happening. Blood by machete and gun-wielding rebels of the Islamic State-affiliated ADF outfit at a prayer vigil in a small town on the eastern border of Congo. Buildings there were also torched. The ugly toll included 15 men, 19 women, and 9 children. Their bodies found strewn around the area. Other children were abducted. The eyewitness added to Fox News Digital, they kill those that met in the church hall. Those who tried to flee were caught and killed in the compound and running towards the road. People were sad. There was sad